Hi guys and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today I'm going to disassemble this CYMA CM.048M AK-47 or AKM variant. Hi guys and welcome back. So today I've got probably one of my most favourite AEGs ever. This is the CYMA Full Metal and Steel AKM or AK-47. I absolutely love this thing, and after having some alone time with it, I'm now going to do a disassembly on how to particularly get the gearbox out, and we'll have a look at the internals as we go along as well. So this is one hell of a piece of kit, and if you haven't seen the unboxing, please do go back and see it because it is absolutely gorgeous. The metal's lovely, the wood is lovely, it feels so solid and nice. Really impressed with it. So we'll get started and we'll get cracking with this. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to undo this pin here at the top, and that releases the upper hand guard. Now it comes with a little oval spring, and that just sits, it hooks underneath and over the top like that. So keep that safe to one side. Next thing we're going to do is we've got access to this little lever here. Just going to get flathead, and I'm just going to undo that lever there and check, yeah, there's nothing underneath, and this little bit here now moves forward, and the bottom handguard should just we're going to have to take off the gas rod. So pull down on this rod here and it comes out of its bracket, and that will pull all the way out. Then the handguard will slide forward and out. Oh man, that looks lovely. So put that out of the way. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lift, press the button in and release the top cover like that. There is usually a grub screw in the side of this top cover retaining latch here, and it's got a tiny little hex key in there, so we're just going to get one small enough to release that. So just loosen that off, and what I'm going to do there is I'm just going to slowly push that out of the latch. I'm going to flip it open and let it come back, and that's going to bring the spring with it, and then the handle we're going to get off in a few minutes once we've got the gearbox out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the stock, just because I don't want to put too much weight and pressure on the stock. Yep, found the zone. So we've got one hex key on top there. Flip that out. And I've got one underneath. Sometimes there might be two underneath, depending on the model. Particularly the plastic ones seem to have two underneath. And the stock will come off. Now the wiring is in there. Come on, Pheas. There goes the button from the top of the gearbox. So I've got two hex keys on the battery cover there. So I'm just going to remove those. And there goes the battery cover. So I'm going to keep those two screws with it. There is our wiring, and I should be able to gently now. So what's happening is inside of there, the mini Tamiya connector has got caught on the woodwork, and it's prying the, basically this bit is stuck inside the thing, and this little bit here has been pried up like that. So I'm just going to release it, come back in a second, and we'll move on. So what I did there was I just used a flathead screwdriver just to push down and compress that back down. You can see it's lifted up and bent a little bit, and it's got some tape on it. So I'm just going to undo the tape, disconnect the two wires, and then we can move on. The tape they put on just as a precaution to keep it all together in there, and for this sort of thing. So after the video, when I reassemble it, I'll probably just wrap a little bit of electrical tape around it. There we go. Get rid of the tape. So there we've got the stock. Just tiny little hole that goes down there and comes out into a battery compartment. It's just a hollowed out piece of wood. Love that. We're obviously getting closer and closer to it now, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this front end here. So as you can see there, there's evidence that this has been knocked out, so we're going to knock that pin out there, and I can see, hopefully you can see, there is little teeth around the edge of this side, so it definitely has to go out that way from the left hand side to the right. So I'll just bring this back in. I'm just going to hold that over the top, give this a good crack. There is the pin removed, so this now will just wiggle itself forward. Occasionally there is a grub screw underneath, so you might find that there's also a grub screw in there, but on this one there's not, so we're just going to slide that forward and it will just freely dangle about. That's absolutely fine. Now we've got a grub screw and a big pin, so we'll release the grub screw first. I think that's too big. You are going to need a few different sizes. Perfect. Release it a bit more. Obviously be careful with the grub screws that you don't take them fully out. So on this pin here we're going to knock out. I can see that the teeth are there, so again it's coming out from left to right. So there's the pin with the teeth on it from the right hand side there. And this now will, if we undo these two screws here, it is very fiddly unfortunately, so I'm going to make sure I keep those to one side, and I know that those are the hop screws, so the hop is actually screwed down to the outer barrel itself. Unfortunately this all has to come out to get to the gearbox. That to one side, and now I should be able to, famous last words, there goes the charging handle, wiggle that out. When you are reassembling this and the charging handle comes out, once the spring and the guide is out, this just slides to the back and it opens up here, so this will slide and it will lift out, so it just drops back in and slides, and when you put in the spring and the rod back in, they just go down the hole that's in there, and then they link back into the button again that retains the top cover. Just like that. When you are rebuilding it and you're putting the barrel back together, so obviously I've put the barrel and the hop back in together, make sure, as you can see here, that the hop goes back flush to the gearbox there. So if I move it back forward, you can see what I mean. So it shouldn't be sticking out. You see there's this extra bit of lip, and then there's like a ring there. So that should sit entirely within the gearbox like that, and that's to make sure that you get as good a seal as possible between your hop unit and your air nozzle. The plate in the bottom needs to come out as well, so this plate just helps to guide the mags in so that you can get your mag placed correctly quicker when you're changing mags. So that's just two little Phillips head screws, and that screw that starts to come loose. I'll lift that out. When you're putting this back in the mag well, and this helps to guide the mags back into position, as you can see, I'll just point to it more clearly, there is a little thin bit here and a thicker bit at this end here. The thin bit needs to go to the front of the gun, and that makes sure that it lines up properly and screws in properly to match the mag well in general. I'll put those to one side together, and then a little bit snug. But there goes the outer barrel, and obviously you didn't know AKs have extremely long inner barrels. If you bring the hop all the way forward, obviously I've got the adjustment fully on now just because the handles get knocked. Tilt it up, I can then slide that all the way out as well. So let's have a quick look down there. That is absolutely loads of adjustment. That's fully on, that's a lot of adjustment that. And the barrel is absolutely spotlessly clean, which is really nice to see from a Chinese brand and from CYMA, that they are cleaning the barrels before they're sending them to you. Maybe it was actually Taiwan gun that did that. Next thing we're going to do is the AK Selector, which can be a little bit of a pain. So occasionally this will be the screw itself. Sometimes, like on this one, this is a cover, and you just have to pry it up with a little flathead. So that's just a little metal cover that covers up. It's usually a hex key, but on this one it's a Phillips head screw. So we'll undo that. Now, this selector will lift off, and it's got a very distinct shape that links to the distinct shape of the little bit inside. It's important that you keep these all together. If I lift this up, this is made of two parts. So you've got a little inner brass tube, like that sits inside of this adapter. Now, on one side, it's raised slightly. Let's see if I can get it to focus on that. There you go. It's raised, as you can see in the middle, and that's what the selector sits on. On the underside, it's this shape with a little notch. If I can get it, there we go. With a little notch in the bottom, and the notch will sit on that little notch there, and that's how they join together and operate against each other using that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop the pistol grip off. The rest of the selector assembly will definitely fall off at some point as we take this out. So there's a screw, there's the pistol grip, a little bit of fluff coming out, so I'll put those to one side. There's a motor, there's the motor adjustment in there to get the motor adjusted. It does look like it's one of their newer style high-speed motors. It is very strong magnet. Now that will just push up and out. The wiring needs to be very carefully pushed in through this tube at the back here just to get it going out. And there is, on the right hand side, this is the selector assembly. While I'm pulling wires in, you literally could do with about 4 hands for this. And I'm just going to work it out gently. There we go. So there we've got the empty receiver. So it's got its side mounting on it, and I mean that on itself absolutely weighs a ton. It's really, really heavy, but it's really strong. It's well enforced. You've got big metal plates in there that are holding it all together and things. So I'm happy with that. So I'll put that out of the way. The gearbox itself then, so the button did drop off. There's the button. That's the button that keeps the top cover down, and that just sits in there. Now it used to be, and occasionally still in some gearboxes, this has to go in at the time of building the gearbox, otherwise you're stripping your gearbox again. With this one, what they've actually done is, and a lot of them now, is that will just drop in at a later stage, which is much more useful to people. So that's where that sits in there. With the selector, you've got two easily removable parts. You've got this part and this part. So what happens is, this sits in there, and this is actually your safety. It stops your trigger moving. This sits on top, and if you look, you need to marry the teeth up. So, like that. So the teeth will marry up nicely. It will sit on there, and as that rotates, you can see it's moving the safety. Now that connects onto this cam that comes through the other side, and again is married up with those teeth there nicely, and that's how it should sit, like that. Okay, so we're going to remove these for now, these two bits, and we're going to strip this gearbox open. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to remove this cam. Now there is a lot of thread lock on there, but there is a Phillips head screw in there. Remove that. That's one bit. Now that cam will only go back together one way. As you can see there, that's not a bad casting or anything. That is actually how it should look, like that. And the underside of there shows you that they match together like that, so you know that it's always screwed together in the correct orientation. Remove that. Next thing we're going to do is I'm going to move the camera lower and come back, and then we can get into the nitty-gritty of actually opening this up. So we're down to the lower point now. I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this top cover. Now this top cover, it does look like it's caught the rubber shroud in here a little bit. It's absolutely fine. It's basically held on effectively by this peg. So one of the easiest ways I've found to get this off is use a flathead screwdriver. Some people grab it with pliers at the front. What I tend to do is I get a flathead down there and I just twist it like that, and it just prizes it off like that, and then very carefully just slide it off, and it slides off. And what that helps to do is to compress the top of the gearbox, because there are no screws here. Obviously you can see it's different to a version 2 gearbox that you get from an M4. Next we're going to remove the motor, and that's where generally we're going to have to keep it on the worktop now, just because this stays attached to the rest of the gun. So I'm going to remove the 2 screws there. Make sure, because sometimes these 2 screws can be slightly different lengths, so it's important that the 2 motor screws are kept in the right way round, because they can be slightly different lengths to get around different components. So I'll pull that one out. Come on. There we go. I think on this occasion, I think they're identical, so it's absolutely fine, but put those out of the way. The motor then will just wiggle off and down and away. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 screws and this little black plastic clip here to remove. So I need one screw. It's a shame it's not a quick change spring, because I am going to need to use a little screwdriver just to hold the spring and spring guide down when we start splitting this. 2. I'm keeping the gearbox screws in the same order I've taken them out, so I know, starting from the little one at the front that came out of there, I know the order that they're going back into the gearbox in, so I know that they're all in the correct original locations. Now, this is where the fun happens. So I'm going to start splitting it. I'm going to push down on that one and pull up on this one. I'm going to start splitting the gearbox. As you can see there, gap starting to appear. And I'm just going to I've got a little flathead screwdriver. I'm going to poke that in the back as I go in, and I'm just going to help brace down, because you'll hear it. Oh, I'm not actually. Come on, Pheas. What I am going to do is I'm going to use the same flathead, and I'm going to get under there, and I'm going to ping this out of the way. Well, what this does is it basically just covers up, as you'll see. I can get it. I'm making a right mash of this. That's actually surprisingly stiff plastic. They're usually softer than that. There we go. You can see part of your gear set in there. So now we'll go for the separation again. Screwdriver in the back, holding the spring guide down so that when I split it, it doesn't fire across my living room. Now, like that. So that's relatively soft spring. We've got a full metal bearing based spring guide. So what happens with that is, as the spring compresses, it tries to basically turn. So the bearings allow the spring, as it's moving in and out, to turn, which obviously gives you consistency FPS, and it puts the spring under less pressure. Now we'll lift that out. That is a really nice looking. There goes the tappet spring. That is a very nice looking set. So they're using the blue plastic parts again, which is really nice to see because they're supposedly reinforced. That is a full metal tooth piston in there, and the blue stuff on there is just grease that's in the gearbox. So you've got your blue air nozzle, you've got your blue tappet plate. This is really solid. You've got a blue anodized or ionized or whatever you want to call it, anodized. Ooh, that's good compression in there. Ooh, there we go. That is good compression. Yeah, I'm happy with that compression. That's nice and solid. So what I'm doing there is I'm trapping all the air inside. I'm seeing how far I can push the piston in, just to push in the air, testing the air compression. So what should happen is, based on that compression, I should only be able to get it in so far because the air is compressed in there, which means you've got a good air seal. Obviously, it's never going to be quite as good with your air nozzle on as well. No, I can get it in, but that's absolutely fine as long as there is still pressure. There's still definitely pressure there, and that's really good because it means that we're getting the most out of the air seals, at least within the piston, the cylinder head and everything. All of that is looking good. So we've got a blue trigger block, which it's a standard trigger block. They have gone for, as we seem to see now from the CYMA stuff, is they've gone for the blue daub of grease around the bushings. Now they are bushings and not bearings, so these are just metal, basically bits of metal that are put in there to keep the gears axles in place, but it looks like some time has been spent with that shimming, because that's moderately well shimmed. Just remove that. That is fairly standard looking CYMA gearbox. Just careful to not knock anything about in terms of the shims, because it's a pain. There's your anti-reversal latch. A little bit of grease sort of coating them in general, but nothing horrifically bad. Take that pin off there, and we'll have a look inside the gearbox there. It's looking pretty solid actually. I'm quite impressed with that. So to rebuild it all then, we drop that in there. You want to get your sector gear. Make sure that you're not moving the shims about, because if a shim goes loose and flying about your gearbox, it's going to break it at some point. So I'm just going to rotate that to there. Get your spring, put it on the little peg there and pull it back. Make sure that your air nozzle is sat in the tappet plate, so it should move together like that. I'm impressed with the all metal teeth on the piston. And that's dropped into place nicely. Make sure that the piston tracks are running on the tracks on that side as well. That's looking good. And the trigger has jumped out of its holes, but that's, if you know anything about working on AKs, that's perfectly normal and will cause me no end of issues when I'm putting it together, but never mind. So, anti-reversal latch back in place. That's actually, wow, that's a really strong magnet in there. So, open that up, hold it down with my thumb. Oops. There we go. So, I'm ready to compress this in and get the gearbox side on, which is an absolute pain in the backside. So come back next week to learn how to repair a smashed up AK gearbox. So that's gone in, and these two pins on the side of this spring guide, they link into little holes in the bottom and the top, or left and right sides of the gearbox shell. So I'll lock that back down. Okay, I'm going to hold that in for now. I'm going to bring the gearbox top side in, and I'm going to drop that into place. I'm going to withdraw my screwdriver, and then what I'm going to do is curse, because I'm pretty sure it has, the anti-reversal latch has moved. But basically it's a bit of a balancing act, getting everything in the right place at the right time, and then you can just simply re-follow my video to work your way back through it all and put it back together. So I hope that's been useful today. Please do like and subscribe if you've enjoyed it or found it useful or found any of my videos good and useful, and I will see you next time. Bye.